Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there he is, the Dean, Steven Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. How's it going, Steven?
Mike, it's going great. Couple days closer to kickoff here. We've got some great games in the SEC. We've almost hit November, which means we're in that final stretch of the season. So soak it in, enjoy every game, and let's get to Saturday, man. I'm ready for some more college football.
Yeah, should be some great games on the slate. And even if, sometimes, Steven, doesn't look like a lot of great games, that's generally when we have the best games that we can ever ask for. So I'm fired up for it. This is another double header Wednesday. So as soon as Steven and I are done, cousin Shane and I will be hopping on to do an SEC mailbag edition of the show. So stay tuned for that in about an hour. But as always, Steven, got to let the fine folks know we're brought to you by MyBookie, the online sports book. We're using the MyBookie lines to make all these picks. Head on over to mybookie.ag today if you haven't already. Sign up for an account. The account's free, but if you put any money in your account and use the promo code THATSEC, it's THATSEC over at MyBookie, they'll double your initial deposit today. And Steven's on a little bit of a MyBookie lock heater, so I can't wait to see who he's locked up. How confident are you right now, Steven, about your lock?
Fairly confident. It is kind of a weird week where it's like I feel good about the winners straight up. The locks, the spreads are kind of tight, kind of to where I like the margins. There's two games that I have no idea who's going to win. You said it best there. I mean, there's never a bad weekend of college football. And I mean, I'm sure some of these games that have, double-digit spreads might be a little interesting. Remember, Alabama Vanderbilt wasn't supposed to be interesting, and look what we got. So every Saturday of college football is just glorious in my mind.
Right, and every day is glorious with a cousin like JR. What a guy JR is. He just gifted another membership this time to cousin Mitch Neely. Mitch, welcome to the family. Thank you, cousin JR. You the man. But before we get into it, Steven, I wanted to ask you real quick, because I titled this on our last one, Playoff Elimination Saturday. The longer we get into the season, I try to label the weekends essentially. But would you agree with that? Again, maybe not. I'm not saying every team is going to get eliminated or anything like that, because I still want people tuning in. But it feels like this Saturday, with a couple of these key games, will make or break playoff hopes for some teams. Would you agree with that?
I do. As you were saying that, I was thinking like all the titles you see during the season, like Separation Saturday and all those things.
That was last week.
So it is, I think there's one game in particular that is definitely a playoff elimination game. There's one other one that's definitely on the bubble. But also, I think just in context of the playoff, there are some of these teams like an Ole Miss. Some of the other teams in the league are out of it, but Ole Miss needs to win. Texas needs to rebound. So playoff implications everywhere. And I think what happens in College Station, what happens in Tuscaloosa loom very large and very important for the college football playoff.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is 100% true, so I don't want to spread rumors here, but I did see some engagement online. So I assume this is true. This looks like Mark Stoops' mom has passed away. So thoughts and prayers to Stoops and his family. So that sucks. We won't make fun of him, but all right, Steven, how about before we make our picks, though, before we are ready to eliminate people from playoff consideration, how about our friends over at PrizePicks? Come on. If you ain't already a part of the PrizePicks family, head on over there and use the promo code SEC. What's that get you? You play 5, you get 50 instantly over at PrizePicks. And you may be saying, what in the world is PrizePicks? Daily fantasy sports. They got all the sports covered, and especially for us, they got college football selections. So, Steven, give us this week's PrizePicks selections that we know are going to hit here.
So let's hit some winners. Let's win the cousins some cash. Let's hit some locks too. So over on PrizePicks this week, LSU Texas A&M is the game that we're going to break down here. Let's start with Aaron Anderson. He is at 48.5 receiving yards. I like the more than side of this. He has gone over that total in 6 of the 7 games this year. I think the question is going to be like, where does Will Lee and the blanket line up? Are they on Kyron Lacey? Are they on Aaron Anderson? I'm going to bank on Anderson sort of being the guy that ends up maybe being the primary target on Saturday night. And sticking with the passing game, I like Mason Taylor. He's at 36.5. I like the more than side. I think LSU will look to maybe attack the middle of the field. You think about how the rush, trying to get rid of the ball quick. Mason Taylor's been over that total in 6 of 7 games. So I like Mason Taylor and Aaron Anderson to both go on the more than side on Saturday night. Mike, what do you think?
So it sounds like you're kind of projecting, again, I don't want to full breakdown because we're going to get to it in a minute here, but it sounds like you're kind of anticipating a high scoring game. We're going to get some yards going, and we could be in for a thrilling game on Kyle Field here.
Definitely thrilling. I think this is by far the most competitive, the most kind of hardest game to figure out, maybe in the top like half of the games in college football this weekend. I do think it'll be fairly higher scoring. I think higher scoring than the A&M Notre Dame game. So I think both teams are going to have success moving the ball, especially LSU. I think it's really on Nussmeier and these receivers. So that's kind of why I'm on the more than side of the two receivers there. Nussmeier is at 284.5. I think I'm kind of just staying away from that one. The other two feel about right.
Mm-hmm. But for your selections also, it's kind of, they're strong plays because of the way Garrett Nussmeier is playing. Would you agree with that? I mean, there may not be a quarterback that is in the zone in the SEC quite like Nussmeier.
100%. I mean, he's gone on the road last week and the Ole Miss game. And I think back to the Ole Miss game where, things weren't working great at times for the offense, but he kept hanging in there. And in third downs, in the clutch, in the fourth quarter, in red zone, in overtime, they did what they needed to do to win the game. And I think it's largely because of his play. So not only Nussmeier, but also as a team, just like the fact the way that LSU's been playing. Caden Durham's been coming on their defense, but to me, this is banking on Nussmeier delivering in the clutch again, and also just the way he's played the last couple of weeks. I think he's really improved his stock. You start thinking about the draft. I mean, he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, first one off the board next year.
Mm-hmm. Steven, how about this early contender for comment of the show from Brodo Baggins? DeBoer checks under his bed for Pavia.
Hugh Freeze does too after last year.
What a comment. All right, let's get into it, Steven. We got not that many games. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Don't you have one other PrizePicks?
I did. I actually had 2. So
okay, sorry.
Le'Veon Moss.
I'm just so excited.
I know. Same here. I'm hoping all these hit for all the cousins out there. Le'Veon Moss is at 85.5 rushing yards. Give me the more than side of that. I think if A&M wins this game, it's on him. LSU's on Nussmeier. I think the run game for A&M is critical. And a tip of the cap to all of our friends in the Big Ten. We're going to take Randy Bond. He's at 7 kicking points. I'm going to take the more than side of that. So I think he gets a couple field goals and an extra point.
Yeah, he's been excellent this season, as has Le'Veon Moss, who I believe is second in the SEC right now in rushing. So, yeah, I mean, if this is a high-scoring game, you got to figure they're going to feed Moss the ball. He's been one of the breakout stars in the league this season. So I really like both those picks.
Not to mention, you could think if you're A&M and you want to protect your defense, you get Moss going, you can keep Garrett Nussmeier on the sideline over there, right?
Exactly. All right, Steven, let's get into it here. Delay no further. And I'm going to throw up this little fancy-dancy graphic here. Oh, no, they're not there. Hold on. We'll get there. We're going Ole Miss, Steven, Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored by 20 points, according to my bookie. The over-under's 49 points. Has Oklahoma scored 49 this season? I don't know. Noon Eastern, 11 Central on ESPN. Oh, man, this is right after College Game Day. After the debacle that was last week, Brent Venables fired the offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell. We're reinserted Jackson Arnold Will that give life to Oklahoma? Could they pull off a stunner? Hell, no one thought Kentucky was walking into Oxford and getting a win, but that's exactly what happened. How do you see this one playing out with Ole Miss 2 weeks to prepare?
So I know the spread in this game is pretty massive in favor of Ole Miss, but I actually think I have a ton of intrigue for this game. I want to see what Oklahoma looks like this week on a short week, trying to reset your offensive staff. What kind of tweaks can Kevin Johns and Joe John Finley? What do they do different? Are they able to, or is this kind of what we think? It's a personnel thing, and it's just not going to get fixed this year. But there's a new voice. I'll be interested to see if there's any changes. On the Ole Miss side of things, I am, kind of curious to see, like they had the off week, they've had 2 losses, they're still in the playoff mix. They better show up motivated and ready to go, because I think Oklahoma's defense can at least keep this one close in the first half. But I think with Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, we'll see if he's at full strength. It feels like the combination of the motivation for Ole Miss, the time off, and the Ole Miss defensive front against the Oklahoma offensive line. That is a huge mismatch in this game. I think Oklahoma hangs around early, but I think Ole Miss puts this game away late. So give me Ole Miss 38, Oklahoma 13.
Ooh, 38-13. You think that? How confident are you, though, given that, again, I'm going to throw up Ole Miss schedule here. I mean, only scored 29 on LSU, only scored 27 on South Carolina, 17 on Kentucky. Maybe you can make the case for Kentucky, but I would say Oklahoma's defense, of course, LSU's really turned a corner, so, I'm not talking down to them. But I don't know. These are some really good defenses here. But I think Oklahoma may be the best of the bunch. How much confidence do you have in Ole Miss scoring that many?
Now you've got me worried. No, I am. I do think Oklahoma's defense can hang here, especially up front. And I think if they can create some chaos, and offensively, it is going to be a struggle. But if your defense can hang in there, like the Kentucky game against Ole Miss, you got a chance. So maybe 38's a little high here, Mike. But of the victors that I'm projecting this week, I think Ole Miss is probably the one that I feel the most confident in, just because of the matchups. It's that defensive front against Oklahoma's line, and just hard to see, I think, Oklahoma being able to generate enough offense to pull off the upset.
And then on the other end, Bobby G, cousin Bobby, he says, you really think OU gets 13? I mean, I get that too. You know what I mean? But yeah. New game plan, hopefully. Obviously, a new play caller, new quarterback, or same quarterback, but new time. I don't know. I'm just hoping. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but I'm hoping that gives Oklahoma some life. Possibly getting some receivers back this week would be huge. Going to have to lean on that ground game. But yeah, I'm very concerned, Steven, that we all know Oklahoma's offensive line, the issues they've had. Let me go back to their schedule here. But, I know South Carolina's got some stud defensive ends. Texas got a good front. Certainly, Tennessee. Short of Tennessee, I think this is probably the second best overall defensive line they'll have faced. And that was just a nightmare with Tennessee. So, yeah, it could be more of the same. It better not be for the Sooners. But I certainly get the confidence there, because for all the people that love to mock Lane Whiffen, put me top of the list there, and the defeats they've had this year, one thing you can't say is this defense is exceeding the hype under Pete Golding, I think.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that kind of this Saturday, with having 2 weeks to get ready, 2 weeks to get some of those guys healthy. They played 7 straight games to start the season. So I think the off week, that Ole Miss may benefit probably the most by some of these teams in the middle of the season with that off week, especially with the SEC teams they have played. I'll be very curious to see what they can do on the offensive line for Ole Miss too, because that is a question going forward. If they couldn't block Kentucky, did you see what Georgia did to Texas last week? They got them coming up. So I think it's critical kind of for Ole Miss to use these next couple games to sort of get right before you get Georgia, because that game's probably going to decide whether or not they're still a playoff contender this year.
Now, how about one thing, though, for Ole Miss, Stephen? Because I'm hearing there's lingering concerns that losing to LSU, getting that second loss, has still not been shook. For a better, I don't know a better way to say it, but it has still not, they've still not quite gotten over that. If we see some lingering effects this week in the preparation and we see it on Saturday, is that a path perhaps to Oklahoma pulling an upset here?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's critical that Oklahoma lands a punch early, if that makes sense. I think if you're
Right.
Oklahoma, the longer you can stay in this game, obviously the better. Like if you do the same thing that Kentucky did and you can kind of take the crowd out of it, the uneasiness sets in. I think that can help Oklahoma here. So I think creating some doubt, maybe getting a touchdown early, a turnover. The longer that Oklahoma can sort of prolong this game on the scoreboard, I think the better their chances are of at least covering and then potentially turning it into a Kentucky-style game.
Mm-hmm. Cousin Edwin says Tennessee beat them by 10. Hardly a nightmare for OU. But, I don't know. You tell me, Steven. I mean, that was abysmal. That was the start of what Oklahoma is. You know what I mean? I mean, am I wrong?
I think that game the final result did not indicate how far apart those two teams felt. Does that make sense?
Right. That's exactly. See, Steven's the more measured guy. I say nightmare. He's trying to be nice to you, just like Chicken. What a guy here, Chicken. Chicken just gifted a membership. Appreciate you, brother, to cousin Forrest. So Forrest, welcome to the family. And then Chicken added, please keep Oklahoma out y'all's mouth. It hurts. So let's move on, Steven. Let's hope for their sake they pull us an upset here. But otherwise, he just donated. I'm not going to say any more bad words. How about, speaking of bad words, again, thoughts and prayers, Mark Stoops. We're not going to troll you, but you better believe, Steven, I'm going to troll the hell out of Hugh Freeze, who apparently is hosting Rah Thomas after Lord knows what he did at Georgia. You have to do something pretty bad to get dismissed at Georgia, yet here he is on the plane. So there you go, Hugh. Sell your soul to the devil here. Auburn, you're underdogs at Kentucky. Kentucky, 2.5-point favorite. Over under 43.5. These are two fan bases that are on the edge here, Steven. Night game, the late game, 7:45 Eastern, 6:45 Central on SEC Network. Hugh Freeze, 22-30, career SEC record. I don't know why anyone thinks this guy's an elite coach. Meanwhile, Kentucky's 2-10. In their last 12 SEC home games. Something's got to give here, Steven. What gives here?
Yeah, that's a great stat. But not only is it a great stat, there's got to be a sense of desperation for both teams here, because when we talked on Monday, you look at those schedules for both teams, any path to a bowl game has to be a victory here. And especially for Kentucky, because you still have to play Tennessee, you still have to play Texas, you get your rival in Louisville, albeit it is a series that Kentucky's had the upper hand in recently. So I think if Kentucky still wants to get to a bowl game, it all hinges on this game. Same thing you can say for Auburn too. Just a sense of desperation also plays into the fact that watching these two teams this year, I have no earthly idea who is going to win this game, because I don't know that you can have a ton of confidence in either quarterback here. I don't know you can have a ton of confidence in either team, period. They have combined for 25 turnovers. It's just sloppy play that is probably going to continue in this game. I think if you have to pick something that you trust the most, it is Kentucky's defense. This defense gave up a ton of big plays last week at Florida, but for the most part, they've been pretty rock solid all season. So, Mike, this one is truly a coin flip.
And a playoff eliminator, right?
Right. Yeah. A playoff eliminator for the Birmingham Bowl, baby. Kentucky's got a better field goal kicker. I'm going to take Kentucky. 20-17.
Oh, wow.
It does feel like Auburn could probably, this is very winnable for Auburn, and it wouldn't surprise me if they get this one. To be honest, this one is truly a coin flip for me.
I don't know that helps, though, Steven. Cal was winnable. Arkansas is winnable. Oklahoma at home is winnable with their offense. Missouri last week, that looked like the most winnable game that an opponent could have on the other's field in the SEC. Yet they lost all these games. So I agree. Yes, In a rational mind, I quite honestly, I see Auburn winning this. In a rational mind, Auburn is not I mean, Breeze came out here and said it. We're playing scared. We're coaching scared. Nothing's adding up. We're turning the ball over left and right. I'm just lucky I don't have to pick it till tomorrow.
Man, see, I get to be the punching bag on Wednesdays going first with all the picks, which I thoroughly enjoy. So don't bet the prize picks or my bookie on this game. If you bet anything, take the under.
Right.
This is probably going to be hard for both of these teams to break into the 20s absent some kind of craziness, which it seems like maybe this game is one of those like weird, crazy turnover games or something on special teams or defense decides it. It's also one of the things that I keep seeing from Hugh Freeze every week is we need to get Jarquez Hunter the ball more. Kentucky's got a good rush defense, but Hugh Freeze plays a large role in the offensive staff. If you want to get him the ball, you can simply call more running plays. So,
right.
I don't know, Mike.
Oh, my bad. I don't know how to say her name. Peanut Pros. Kentucky, the holder is bad though, Steven. So to your point, they got an excellent kicker, but if they can't hold that sucker, that has hurt them this season. But how about this comment from Cousin Grant? Out of 10, how many does Auburn win?
Truly, if they played 10 times, it probably would be split 5. I think not to go all Hugh Freeze on everybody, but this one really does seem like a coin flip.
Which program, as of today, before we know the outcome of this game, which program do you think is trending in the wrong direction more?
That's a good question.
It's a sad question too, but
yeah, the fact that it's a hard question is also telling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably have to go Auburn. I mean, there's no reason this team should be where it is this season. Losing to Cal, like you mentioned, also very winnable games against. They just keep finding ways to lose games. So I would probably go Auburn, but there's not much separation in that answer, and that's a bad answer, I know.
Right. I mean, heck, as bad as things are seemingly for Kentucky, at least they can hang their hat on. They beat Ole Miss on the road. They came a hair away from beating Georgia, and I get it, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but where's that game for Auburn? I mean, maybe last year, Gravedigger, but that's been a while ago. How about this, Steven? I'm going to ask you. Yeah, I know you're not a hot taker guy, but I don't know if this is even a hot take question because I didn't realize till yesterday ULM's 5-1 and they're actually pretty good. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Auburn loses out, Kentucky on the road, Vanderbilt at home, ULM at home, Texas A&M at home, and at Alabama, if they lose out and lose 9 in a row to go 2-10, would they fire Hugh Freeze, you think?
I think he would be back next year. He would probably start right at the top of the hot seat list, though, for me. Mike, we talked about this on Monday. It's not crazy that they could go 0-8 in SEC play. Kentucky this week, like you said, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Alabama. I mean, they probably find a win somewhere in there, but 0-8 in the SEC after an off season talking about progress, recruiting, all that stuff would be a massive disappointment. So I think they'll find one, but I don't know. There's no guarantee, which is also part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. And Cousin Sam points out ULM lost to Oklahoma. So all of a sudden, I mean, he's using it as a troll. I'm sitting here saying that's a hell of a win for Oklahoma. Maybe their best win of the season.
Yeah, Texas beat them this year. Yeah, it was 51-3.
Oh, well, yeah, he's way wrong then.
Oklahoma beat Tulane, yeah.
Gotcha. Fake news. Okay. All right, let's move on, Stephen. Here's another. This could be anyone's ball game, I really do think. Arkansas at Mississippi State. Arkansas, they opened as a touchdown favorite, but it's down to 5.5-point favorite in the Razorbacks' favor, over under 58 total points. Game kicks off at 12:45 Eastern, 11:45 a.m. Central, SEC Network. What do you like here, Stephen?
Mike, I think that this game is pretty interesting. I know that all the attention is going to be on Missouri and Alabama and Texas A&M and LSU, but I've got a lot of interest in this game because it feels like it's a dangerous spot for Arkansas. Going on the road to Starkville, a hungry Mississippi State team. If you're Arkansas, avoid the 1 step forward, 2 steps back thing that has happened. Be able to close the door, do the small things right. So I think how this game could play out early on is going to be critical. I think Mississippi State needs to get off to a fast start, get the crowd involved. Don't let Arkansas go up 14 points. I think if you're Mississippi State, you have to be thrilled. Not to say thrilled, but you have to be pleased with the fact that you just navigated a schedule with Georgia, Texas, and Texas A&M. And I think you probably raised some eyebrows of just, they didn't end up being as bad as maybe people thought, considering the spread. So I think it's critical that just looking at their schedule, this is probably the most winnable game for Mississippi State the rest of the way. They get Arkansas at home. So I think there's a lot at stake here for both teams. Arkansas, the path to 6 victories, it probably runs through Starkville. The matchups in this game favor Arkansas because you look at what's going on at the line of scrimmage. Mississippi State has struggled to stop the run. They've struggled to pass block. Arkansas should have an edge there. But I think the fact that this game is in Starkville, I think Mississippi State is going to play really well. And I think they're going to cover. But I think Arkansas finds a way to win a close one. So regardless of who you pick, we can all hope that it's not a 7-3 repeat. We get a much better game, and I think we will. So I will take Arkansas 31, Mississippi State 27.
And which team you think needs this one more? Because like you said, this appears on paper. We'll throw up state schedule again, but this appears to be maybe their most winnable game in conference with at Tennessee, Missouri at home, and at Ole Miss. You really, again, I don't think anyone's going to hold it against Jeff Lebby if they go 0-8 in the SEC, given all the turmoil and the complete roster overhaul and all that. But again, you just don't want that on your record. You want to have something to build on, and hopefully a 2-game winning streak going into Tennessee give you a lot of momentum. Meanwhile, Arkansas, given what they have coming up, they desperately need this one as well. And if they got any shot at having a 500 or better record overall and in conference play, they probably got to get this one.
Yeah, I think Arkansas needs this one more. I think if you're Mississippi State, they're an underdog here. They're going to be an underdog in their 3 remaining SEC games. This is clearly their best chance. But I think if Mississippi State loses, nobody's expecting Mississippi State they weren't expecting Mississippi State to be good this year. And considering the fact they're an underdog, I don't think people would hold that against Jeff Lebby. Whereas Arkansas, a very winnable SEC game, Mississippi State in a year 0 situation, it's a game Arkansas should win given the matchup. So their path to 6 victories to me runs through this game and Louisiana Tech. They might pick off somebody else, but that's the easiest path, and you get to 6 victories and you get to a bowl game. So I think Arkansas needs this game more.
Mm-hmm. And Sven, appreciate you, brother. He just gave us 2, I think that's euros. He says State 24, Arkansas 21. So that would be a great win for Jeff Lebby and company. And Cousin Benjamin, appreciate you, brother. He just gifted a membership to Marcus Roberts. Marcus, welcome to the family, brother. But all right, let's move on here, Steven, to hopefully what could be a very, very competitive game. The Kingslayers, Texas at Vanderbilt. How about it, Steven? Game opened as I believe, a 17-point line, but it has moved. Interestingly enough, I didn't see this coming. It's moved in favor of Texas. Texas now an 18.5-point favorite on the road at Vanderbilt. Over under 53 total points. Game kicks off at 4:15 Eastern, 3:15 Central on the SEC Network. How about this one, Steven?
First thing that comes to my mind is, can Vanderbilt do it again? We know they beat Alabama. I think it's going to be a little bit harder to beat Texas. And probably one of the factors in that is the worst possible thing for Vanderbilt was they now have Texas' attention. Texas coming off the loss. They will be motivated, I assume. They should be ready to go to keep their playoff hopes alive. And Vanderbilt, the fact that they beat Alabama and they have been so competitive in SEC play, Texas is walking into this game wide awake and sort of wary, to be wary of an upset potential. So Vanderbilt will have the full attention of Texas. From a matchup perspective, I think the key thing for Vanderbilt, it's Diego Pavia plus possessions. you need to find a way to control the game, limit the possessions of Texas, sort of a slower, lower scoring game, stay in third and manageable, and let Pavia create. On 3rd and 3, he can convert on a running play, a short pass that goes for some yardage. Pavia plus possessions. That's the path for Vanderbilt to me for victory. I think on the other side, if you're Texas, you want to score early, score often, and make Vanderbilt uncomfortable and make them play from behind. This isn't the same old Vanderbilt. I really believe that with Pavia. I think every time he steps on the field, Vanderbilt has a belief that they can win. I think they will have a lot of belief on Saturday. I just think Texas is better. And I think whether it's Ewers or Arch Manning, the matchup of the passing game for Texas against the Vanderbilt secondary will be problematic. And Texas defense is better than Alabama, so they will do enough to slow down Pavia. Texas 34, Vanderbilt 17.
Man, why do you hate Diego Pavia? Hey, as they're pointing out, though, this is one of my favorite stats here. Vandy's 8-3 in one tie against Texas. I mean, they owe the series, and they're saying none of these were in Nashville. All the wins were in Austin. So history is on the line here in Nashville. But yeah, I can't wait for it because who knows? I mean, legit. I mean, this is crazy, Steven. This is absolutely crazy. But if Vanderbilt were to win, which I don't think that would not be, that's not as ludicrous to say after we see them beat Alabama. Let's say Vanderbilt does pull a stunner here. Let's say they win by 1 point even. Is there a path for them to reach the playoff here?
I think so, because at that point, if they win out, that would include wins over LSU, Tennessee, Texas, and Alabama. All 4 of those are top 15 teams. It's even crazy to even be discussing this. But yes, it's not crazy. If they win out with the wins they have, they should be in that discussion. And I think they probably would make it at that point.
That's the best resume in the country.
Yeah.
If you just overlook their losses. You know what I mean?
But, the Georgia State one, yeah. It's not so good. Yeah.
But no, I mean, this is going to be wild, Steven, because it's all about Texas and how do they bounce back? And do they let 2 games beat them? You know, that is a real thing in college football. Do they let any of the Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning stuff get to them? I think that is a real thing. And as much as they try to downplay that, they downplay it and then they throw gasoline on the fire by playing them against Georgia, Arch, that is. So, this could be danger zone for Texas because it all goes up in flames if you let Diego Pavia do some magic on you. And he has proven time and time again he can get, he's not scared. And I don't think Vanderbilt will either. I think they were even caught looking ahead last week playing Ball State.
Yeah, I mean, Vanderbilt is first in the SEC in time of possession, and a lot of that is what Pavia is able to do offensively, and it's their path to victory. But also it is interesting to see how the mindset and just sort of like the belief of this team has changed in 1 year, because you think back to how much of a struggle last season was, but they bring in Diego Pavia, who just is a belief every time he steps on the field that, hey, we're going to try and we can beat these guys. And we saw them already play close against Missouri. They beat a pretty good Virginia Tech team in the opener. I mean, they tend to play up to the teams on their schedule. And they've played down to Georgia State and Ball State a little bit. But, I mean, there's a real opportunity here for Vanderbilt to, I think, at least keep this game a lot closer than the spread and make it competitive. The other thing for Mike, I think for Texas, if Quinn Ewers struggles here, I promise this is not a hot take. If Ewers struggles early and you go to Arch Manning and he plays well, at that point, can you go back to Quinn Ewers? I mean, it feels like once you make the change one more time, that might be the last time you can do it. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might need old Arch to outdo Diego. Who in the world could have imagined uttering that statement? But yeah, you just can't keep going back. I mean, you're putting them out there for a reason. So yeah, I would agree 100%.
It feels like even though Texas is a big favorite, we're probably going to learn a lot about this team in this spot. Like if they go out and win 55-10, statement made, if Ewers plays well, I think we can say the rust has been knocked off, and the schedule's pretty favorable coming up before that game against A&M. So there's still the Texas is very much alive for the national championship and playoff, but danger spot here for sure in Nashville.
Yeah. One thing real quick, Stephen, to go back to the previous game, Razor Bass, appreciate your brother. He gave us a donation. He says, Sven, you shut your mouth when you talk about the Razorbacks. Hogs by 90. So we got a little dueling Arkansas, Mississippi State battle in the comments. But all right, Stephen, let's kick it over to what I think will be a lot better game than the odds makers. Missouri at Alabama. Alabama favored by 13.5 points. Over-unders 55 total points. And this will be the 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central kick on ABC. Stephen, thoughts on this one?
So I think the spread in this game is a little high for me. I also wonder if Vegas might be pricing in Brady Cook's status to some extent. That's the big X factor for me. Like, does Brady Cook play? Is he 100%? Is he only 50, 60%? The spread being that high is also kind of a, I think I said it's kind of about Brady Cook, but also it makes me wonder about Alabama too, because you look at their SEC games this season, 4 SEC contests, they've all been decided by one score. So Vegas thinks that this game is not going to be, really all that competitive. It's going to be an easy win for Alabama. I'm just not so sure. This is a playoff elimination game for both teams. We came into the season looking at Missouri's schedule. There was this huge game in Tuscaloosa. They need to win it. For Alabama, they've got 2 losses. They have no margin for error the rest of the way. So a ton at stake. But there's also a ton of intrigue for me in just the individual players and matchups, because if Brady Cook is healthy and he has enough time to throw and navigate the pocket, I think these Missouri receivers are going to make some plays on Alabama's defense. We've seen, everybody so far this year. Alabama struggled to stop the run. They've had issues against the pass. I think Missouri can move the ball here. And then on the other side, do we get a better version of Jalen Milroe than we did last week? Like the last 2 weeks, basically since the first half against Georgia, he hasn't looked like the player I think we thought we would see. So I am interested to see if he gets back to playing at the high level we expect out of him. To be honest with you, I don't like the vibes at Alabama right now. Is that fair?
No, it certainly is. And to your point on Jalen Milroe, just hearing whispers all around the program. It's either the guy's hurt because he is not the running threat. He's passing opportunities to run, or I've heard also that he's got it in his head. Someone must be telling him you've got to develop as a passer to make it in the NFL. And I think he's trying to prove that. And I don't know the logic in that because I'm not a huge NFL watcher anymore just because I'm so consumed with SEC. But last time I checked, there's a guy named Lamar Jackson who, Michael Vick. There's been plenty of NFL quarterbacks that can run. And I don't know. There's somewhere in between there, but if he struggled, let's say they get down, let's say they're down in halftime by Missouri, who again is a 2-touchdown underdog. If they're losing at halftime, could you imagine a scenario where Jalen Milroe gets benched? Could you foresee that at all?
Man, it would be pretty shocking to see that, I think. I think he's your guy. You have to ride it out. Now, if he is injured, that's a different story because he is a completely different quarterback without the mobility. And, going back to last week's game, I thought we would see Jalen Milroe run the ball more, at least have more rushing yards than he did. That's such a big part of what they want to do. But also at times it does feel like either one, Jalen Milroe has to make a play or he has to throw it up to Ryan Williams and they have to make a big play that way. Like they need, I think, a little bit more down to down consistency. So I think this is an interesting spot for Alabama's offense. And I said, I don't like the vibes. There's just a lot of like everything going on, the 2 losses, some of the things you've seen in games, the penalties. I don't have a great feeling right now about Alabama, but they are at home. Hard to know what to expect out of Brady Cook. And of course, Nate Noel is also banged up. So I'm going to take Alabama to bounce back. but I'm going to take them 30-20, sort of hedging in between Brady Cook playing and not playing. If he plays, I think it's much closer, but I like Missouri for sure to cover, and I'll take Alabama to win.
So you pick Bama, but I sense not a lot of confidence in that selection.
That is exactly right. It's a weird place to be, and maybe I'm just overreacting. Mike, you feel free to call me out on this, but they've had some issues on defense all year, like we've talked about, and now some doubt starting to creep in offensively with a team that's been pretty sloppy. I mean, is that crazy to think about that like that?
No, not at all. And again, going back to the spread is just so interesting because this feels like more of a toss-up than anything.
Yeah, I was surprised it was that high. And the only thing I could come to was Vegas just thinks Brady Cook will either not play or he'll be limited on Saturday. So I think that's really the key. Like if I'm trying to bet this game, I want to wait till like the last minute on Friday or Saturday to read that SEC injury report. But just in general, it just feels like when you look at Alabama's schedule, they've played close games in conference play every week. Missouri, while they may not be as good as they are last year, they come to Tuscaloosa bringing this receiving core that could be problematic for Alabama secondary. So I think Missouri's got the firepower to keep this one close. I keep thinking we are going to see some fire out of Alabama. I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen it. We didn't see it against South Carolina. We didn't see it against Tennessee. So maybe I'm banking too much on not seeing it after not seeing it the last few weeks, but I think this is going to be a closer game than Vegas thinks.
All right, last one, Steven. How about LSU at Texas A&M? It's going to be the night game. It's going to be a blackout. A&M favored by 2.5 points, over under 53.5. 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central on ABC. These teams couldn't be any hotter. Both have won 6 in a row coming into this matchup. The only two undefeated SEC teams in conference play. How do you see this one breaking down?
Like I mentioned on Monday, just like we all predicted, these two teams would be undefeated, and especially after they lost in the first week of the season. And you kind of wondered where these two teams were going to go. But to the credit of Mike Elko and Brian Kelly, they have improved so much from week 1 to week 9. So even before all this improvement, this game was interesting just because of the series. The home team is usually the one that comes out on top. And the individual matchups in this game are going to be awesome. You've got Garrett Nussmeier against a standout Texas A&M defensive front. And then on the other side, you have LSU's defense, which seems to be trending in the right direction, going up against A&M and that rushing attack. So these two teams have improved a ton during the season, but also think about what's at stake. The winner here, big step forward to the SEC championship game, also college football playoff. I think the loser here, considering it's only their second loss, is still very much alive, but the winner, big step forward there too. So plenty at stake, a ton of individual matchups. The crowd at Kyle Field is going to be awesome. So, Mike, I cannot wait to Saturday night to get here because I think there are just so many intriguing matchups in this game.
Do you think the winner of this game makes the SEC championship, or is that still to be determined?
I think I feel pretty good about LSU if they win this game. Like A&M's path going on the road to South Carolina, they still have to play Texas. I feel like LSU's path is a little bit more favorable. Not 100% in the clear, of course, because we'll see if Florida continues to play well. They get mighty Vanderbilt in there as well, and of course Alabama. So it's not easy. But I think if you're LSU and you win this game, it gets you to 4-0, and that schedule's really favorable, which puts you in a driver's seat to be in Atlanta.
Do you think A&M can get to Garrett Nussmeier? I don't know if you've seen this statistical breakdown, Steven, but LSU's only allowed 2 sacks this season on 288 pass attempts. That's the 6th most pass attempts in the country, and only Army has allowed fewer sacks, and they've only thrown the ball 56 times. So quite literally the best pass blocking offensive line, and it's not even close in the country. Can A&M get to Garrett Nussmeier, and could that be the deciding factor in this one?
I think that is at the top of my list for factors that could decide this game because early in the season, and especially against Notre Dame, I thought we would see A&M's front dominate a little bit more. But I think they've started to dial in over the course of the season. 6 sacks, of course, against Missouri, 3 last week, and 3 against Arkansas. Once SEC play hit, it felt like the switch was flipped for this defensive line, and they've been good against the run. The one check in LSU's favor, and this also makes me think that they can hold up on Saturday night, is they played really well against Ole Miss. Now, South Carolina's crowd gave them some trouble. We'll see if A&M's crowd can do the same thing. I think the crowd in College Station could be critical here because we saw, Jalen Milroe and Alabama's offensive line struggle to get adjustments in Knoxville last week. So if you can maybe get a few false starts, maybe there's a holding penalty, get them backed up, A&M's front can really create some havoc. But based upon what we've seen, LSU's offensive line has held up so far this year, and I think there's a good chance they do so again on Saturday.
How about this question, Stephen? Who do you have more confidence in, the LSU rushing attack or the A&M passing attack? And I'm talking specifically in this matchup.
Ooh, that's a good question. I probably would take A&M's passing attack, I think. It's close though. I mean, I like the way that Caden Durham is playing, and I think certainly the balance that LSU has now. They have a quality defense, it seems, to go with Nussmeier and Durham. So I like the more well-rounded that LSU is becoming. I think is better for their hopes of winning this game and more. But I also think that I know Wigman didn't play great last week necessarily. He was solid, but at home against Missouri a couple weeks ago, that's the Wigman that I thought we would see coming into this year. So I think at home, maybe you see a little bit closer to the Wigman that we saw against Missouri.
Mm-hmm. And then A&M, just the overall offense, LSU, the overall defense, both in first year under new schemes. Let's say the game's on the line and A&M's got to go 70 yards, score a touchdown or something. Or maybe even get into field goal range, however you want to phrase it. If it comes down to that, A&M offense, LSU defense, which unit do you think steps up and wins the game?
Man, that's another tough question. Got any easy ones you could ask?
That's why you're here, Steve. Yeah. You're here for this professional analysis here.
I have to tell you, and you can call me crazy by saying this, but Mike, I have a lot of confidence in the LSU defense after the last couple of weeks. I know maybe Taylor Green wasn't 100% last week, and Jaquindon Jackson was also banged up at Arkansas. But it does feel like as the season has progressed, LSU's defense is sort of finding the right mix. I mean, Whit Weeks is playing out of his mind for a couple. If he does that on Saturday, combined with Braden Swinson in the trenches, LSU can win this game. So I might have a little bit more faith in LSU's defense right now.
Interesting.
But not by much, though.
Yeah. So who's it going to be? You got to pick one here, Steven.
I'm going to go with LSU 27, A&M 24.
27-24. What a ball game. What a game that would be. And if it plays out that way, trying to throw LSU schedule 7-1, 4-0. Man, they'd have 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama. Yeah, you'd have it. Let's phrase it this way: if LSU wins this game, do you think they make the playoff?
Yes, I do. I would be surprised if they lose more than once the rest of the way. In fact, I think they probably run the table if they beat Texas A&M. So yeah, I think they would be on the right side of the bubble. And especially with wins over Ole Miss and A&M, who I think are going to be ranked at the end of the year, they'd be in really good shape.
Mm-hmm. And that would be a heck of a coaching job by Brian Kelly and staff. Now, what about A&M? If they were to, let's say they drop this game, as you just predicted, but just by a slim margin. But let's say they win out after that, which would include a win over Texas at home in the finale. Would a 10-2 A&M with losses to Notre Dame and LSU, do you think 10-2 A&M would get into the playoff?
I think they would be right on the bubble. because keep in mind you're competing against Notre Dame, who has one loss right now,
Right.
a very bad loss. So that head-to-head victory could come into play. Now A&M would have solid victories against Arkansas, Missouri, and then potentially Texas. So they're right there. I think the committee might have them behind Tennessee if that's the scenario, but they're right there. I think you maybe are starting to get into that territory of Texas A&M, where you want one of those Big 12 teams that's not the champion to start losing. The undefeated Iowa State, BYU, Indiana. Root for Navy to beat Notre Dame this weekend to knock them out. So, they're still very much in it if they lose this game. The reason I should say this too, I went back and forth a ton on this game. Earlier in the week, I was all about A&M. I just keep coming back to two things. I think the edge that Nussmeier at quarterback over Wigman, and also the way that LSU's defense has played the last few weeks. So that kind of swung me from A&M coin flip to slight lean for LSU.
Shout out Free Durden. Appreciate you, brother. He became a member of the channel here just a second ago, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of split myself, and again, thankful that I got another day to sit here and stew on it. But this is going to be a tremendous ball game of the weekend in the SEC night game. Cannot wait for it.
Yeah, it's this week's Super Bowl, Mike. I mean, just think about how awesome it's going to be at Kyle Field with 100,000 fans. How noisy it's going to be. To see what LSU's offense can do in a very hostile environment. You also have the A&M offense, which I do think is trending in the right direction. And I would like to see them with Connor Wigman come out, have some confidence early, be able to get Le'Veon Moss going. If they can do those two things with the pass rush, the defense, I think A&M's got a really good chance to pull it off. I mean, I've got it as a 3-point game, but this one feels very much like a toss-up to me.
Right. Yeah, I can't wait for it, Stephen. Again, I think it's going to be another epic weekend in the SEC. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Mike, I agree with you. I think just from a playoff perspective, just conference title race, individual matchups, coaches on the hot seats, coin flip games, this weekend has it all. So I can't wait for Saturday. I can't wait to come back next Monday and digest all this with you. And as always, thanks for everybody for watching, interacting, and can't wait to do this again next week.
And I apologize if I missed it, Stephen. Real quick, final thing. Did you have a MyBookie lock of the week?
I do. I'm going with Ole Miss as my lock of the week.
Gotcha. Okay, so Ole Miss minus 20. You hate the Sooners. Just admit it, Stephen. Come on.
It was tough, man. I don't know. These spreads this week are not. I don't have like a great feeling about all these. Like kind of like
Right.
last week, they're close or they're just not in the window I would be comfortable betting. So
I gotcha. All right, so yeah, stay tuned. Cousin Shane and I are going to hop on here in just a minute to do a mailbag show, but that's going to wrap it for this one. Stephen, thank you so much for all you bring to the show. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes here. Oh, wait, forgot my little video here. I don't even know what I'm doing.